Just refresh the group and then
Can I refresh it? Or was it mess you up?
I don't think that's how it works.
I think he's doing it on my account.
You let me know when we're good, Mike.
we should be good. If you refresh the group right now.
Test, test. All right, we're back, baby.
Oh, we're back.
Let us know. Can y'all hear us? We are back. Sounds great. Perfect. Hey, everybody, now that we are back, one thing that we are going to highlight is tonight at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern, so in 53 minutes from this, if you want to get better at selling, the Contractor Fight is having it's all about role playing, is essentially what they're doing, these breakout rooms.
Logan was all about this. He used to dress up in like weird garments and stuff and do that kind of stuff in random fields in DC
That's a different
area.
kind of role play.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Different breakout rooms, it's just by different levels of fetish. They're doing, over in the Contractor Fight, they're having tonight, it's called Coliseum Night, but long story short, it's all sales, it's all role playing, it's all the part of sales that people don't actually want to do, but it's also like the part of, like, if you want to be good at football, you got to practice. If you want to be good at sales, you got to practice. And that's what tonight's going to be. So if you guys want to learn how to sell, tonight, 7 o'clock Eastern, there's not going to be a replay. So I posted a link to it in the group earlier. Check that shit out. It's going to be very, very impactful because it's all the training that Chris and I both went through back when we first started learning how to sell.
Yeah, and I think that one of the cool things about it is it really is going to normalize the idea of role playing, because it is great to learn or read a book about sales, but if you're not actually practicing your craft, it is a integral part of your business, and you got to make sure you're actually doing it. So I would not be here. I'd be physically in this form, but I would not be at this point in my sales career if it was not for that program. So I definitely want to shout it out and give it due credit.
Yeah, and I remember like going through just like the sales conversation, sales talk. I mean, I made a post about this like in the other Facebook group, but essentially what happens is most of us think that, I don't need to like actually practice it. I can just watch YouTube videos. And I've even talked to other like marketing agency owners where we'll bring up, like I will do role plays with them to try to help them like sell, because we're selling the same services. And then when I'm done doing it, they're like, oh man, how'd you do that? And I'm like, I practice. Like I actually, I learned it, and then I practiced over and over and over. And unfortunately, when I'm like, well, what are you gonna do? And they're like, well, I'll just keep watching YouTube videos. I'm like, that's like you trying to,
learn how to play basketball by watching TV.
Yeah. It's like, and this is why Chris watches porn. He's trying to write some tips down.
What?
But you got to practice this bad boy, Chris.
The thing is, I have a child and Logan has no kids, so I'm pretty sure I'm one up on him. But anyway, that was the most. Now Megan's definitely going to watch the Cgtv tonight. But no, seriously, I getting right back into it. Like, if you have a business and you do not know how to sell, or you do not have someone in your business that is responsible for the selling and knows how to sell, there's a big pillar in your business that you're not actually optimizing, right? So you got marketing, fulfillment, you got sales, and if you're just simply saying, hey, I know how to build this stuff, and that's it, and I don't have a system to actually know how to sell, and I'm not actually having someone actually can sell to through marketing, you're really missing the boat in a lot of ways and leaving a lot of money and opportunities on the table. So
let me tell you guys about the first sales call that Chris had when I wasn't here. So
oh gosh, this is pretty funny. I hope he's actually, if someone knows this guy, it's like Grout, Doctor, whatever his name is, please get him on here.
So what happened, this was when Chris first started learning how to sell. And what I was like the secondary salesman. So the way that it worked was it was Chris and two other guys would reach out to people, because it was outbound sales, and talk about.
This was my first day, so they weren't even here yet.
Yeah. Oh, really? So just you. So it was, hey, let me talk about your website, your marketing, all that stuff, like what's working, what's not working. Well, somebody scheduled a call, and I was
going to your sister's wedding.
I was at my sister's wedding, and the whole idea was Chris, who's brand new at this sales stuff, was supposed to talk to the person, kind of pre-qualify them, set them up, and then put them on my calendar. Well, this guy hops on Chris's calendar, and I'm at my sister's wedding, and I get a call, and he's like, hey, I don't know if this is normal, because again, this is his very first call. And the guy is apparently, like, what is he telling you?
He says, hey, I don't want to talk to a middleman. So I call him up. I remember it was like the grout surgeon. I hope he's doing well, but the grout surgeon was the name of his company, I think it was. And I called him. I was like, hey, let me ask you a couple questions about your business so I can, best prepare you. And if everything sounds great, what I'll do is I'll put you on Logan's calendar so that you guys can have a more thorough conversation.
And just so you know, there's probably a very good chance it didn't sound like that at all.
Yeah, probably sound like, because it's my first, I was like, hey, how you doing?
He did a high-pitched Mickey Mouse voice. He was still practicing the words, but essentially that was the gist of it.
Yeah, so my goal in that call was just to talk to him, find out more about his business. If he was going to not be a great fit at all for what we actually provide, let him know that so he wasn't wasting his time. And then also, if he was going to be a good fit, understand what's going on so you can come prepared to the call. And so I probably sound like this the whole time, but I was, just trying my best to have a good conversation. And legitimately, he stops me and says, hey, dude, I don't talk to a middleman. And I'm like, what? I was like, I had no idea why he was so frustrated with me. And I was like, well, I mean, I want to do the best thing for you, man, but, the owner of the company, Logan, he's actually, out right now. He's like, yeah, I'm sure he is. I was like, no, I'm serious. He's at his sister's wedding. Like, I shouldn't be telling you this right now. He's at his sister's wedding. And so I called Logan, and I was like, Logan, dude, I don't know if this is normal or not, but I think I would totally screwed this one up. This guy was not having it at all. So,
and I'm like, Chris, don't worry, man. That is not that normal. I have had the people that come in and I'm like, all right, so tell me about what you're looking for. And they're like, well, what do you do? And I'm like, well, no, we do a lot of things here, but we may not be the best fit for you, but I want to understand more about what it is that you do. And I remember this dude was like, I know what you're doing here. I'm the one that needs to be asking the questions, not you. And I'm like, all right, man, tell me, what do you want to know? And he's like, what do you do? I was like, we do websites and SEO. He's like, okay, what do they cost? And I was like, website starts at $12,800. He's like, you know what? You're right. This is not a good fit. And he hung up on me. And I was just like, all right, man, you fucking got me. You're really good. So it happens to everybody. But the reason that we're bringing this up is tonight, a lot of this stuff, it's all practice, right? You got to practice this shit. And we talk about this a lot in our office as well, where, if we're on the phone with a client that is less than ideal of what's happening, or a prospect or whomever.
Well, it's not they're less than ideal. It's just the fact that their situation is not our solution is not a good fit for their situation.
Correct.
And I think that we've got to make sure that we are not just throwing our situation on everybody. 1,000%, I know that our stuff works, and so because of that,
that's not where I was going with.
No,
this.
I'm talking about what I feel right now. So 1,000%, I know that our stuff works, but I also am very cognizant of the fact that it's important for me to understand who's me the best fit for and who it's not.
The reason I was bringing this up, everybody, was essentially to say the more iterations that I've gone through with all this stuff, the easier it is. Where naturally, if you think that something's going to go one way and somebody throws a curveball, your fight or flight mechanism is going to hit you. And when you're in fight or flight,
you go Mickey Mouse voice.
You go Mickey Mouse voice. You don't know how to act. And the more that we've had this experience of hearing, objections, or hearing people get mad or say that, you don't ask the questions, I ask the questions, the more that I'm then able to remove myself and essentially look at this as like a chess game where I'm like, okay, this dude doesn't he thinks that he needs to be in control. So how do I handle it? And the last time that happened, I didn't know how to handle it because it was the second time it's ever happened. Now I would then take that, turn around, role play it, and then actually figure out all the different iterations of what I can do. And it helps to kind of lower that fight or flight. And then now it's, again, just a game where I'm like, if somebody's saying something to me, I'm like, all right, I'm going to let them finish. But as soon as they're done, I'm about to hit them with this, this, and this, and then I'm good. But initially when I used to get those situations, I would freak out and be like, oh my God, what did I do wrong? Where do I go from here? And then I would just totally shut down. So... yeah, Josh, we kind of found some of this stuff because the way that we first started doing the
Josh, I got $20 for you, bro. Well, no, let's actually. Do you mind being completely honest right now?
No, I'm gonna lie to everyone.
All right, be honest on this question. All right, real question. Logan Shinholder, look at that camera. Who is better at sales, me or you?
I think as a whole, Chris is actually better than sales. And I say that because there's really two aspects of sales in my mind. You first got the conversation. When it comes to having a conversation with somebody on the damn, that was a good graphic. That's straight from Chris's mouth. Whenever you have a conversation with somebody, this is all the stuff that my dad was really good at, was talking about, what to say in sales, things like that. I still feel like I'm better at that aspect of it than you.
And so say that again. I was
The
kind of
actual conversation. So let's say a lead comes in and there's you and I both have to handle this lead. I still feel like I have the edge of having that conversation with them. But when it comes to every other facet of sales, the prospecting, the follow-up, essentially those are the only two aspects.
So you're
of
saying
it.
all the intellectual stuff you're thinking better than me at, but all the manual stuff I'm better than you?
I think when it comes to finding people and continuously following up, I think you're better at pestering. I think you're better.
That was the worst backhanded compliment ever. Yeah, you're not better than me in sales. Well, actually you are, because of the fact that all the stuff like pestering people, you're really good at.
So no, essentially Chris is really good at staying on top of people, being top of mind, while with me, I feel like I'm always
So
inherently.
that's more like marketing then, huh?
No, that's sales and prospecting. I would say I'm more inherently better at just the conversation, because it's easier for me to empathize with them, because especially if you're selling to another business owner. Now, if you were like selling to like the business owner's friend that got a job there just because they were friends, you could empathize with them. But when it comes like business owner to business owner, like it's going to be easier for me to actually like call out situations that they're dealing. Like we deal with this. Like I remember talking to a client the other day, and he was talking about his project manager. Oh, we're having issues with slippage in production. And I was like, all right, let me guess. Your project manager is not getting the job done, but you feel bad because you haven't set them up correctly. And you're afraid now that if you go back and try to correct this stuff, they're going to get frustrated with you and potentially get pissed off at you and say, screw it. I've got 4 other job opportunities I could probably jump to. I'm out of here. And now you got to be your own project manager. And they were like, yeah, that's it. And I was like, yeah, I deal with the same thing. Like, I got this guy, Chris, where I got to like eggshell it all the time. But either way, it's the empathy side of it all. So we say all that. We'll kind of put this sales thing to rest. But 7 o'clock tonight, if you want to hop on it, it's some good stuff, and it's exactly all the shit that we've gone through.
100%.
Cool. All right. So jumping in tonight, as some of you guys know, we're making this more of just like a nice back and forth. So
Can you ask for the live real quick? Just want to see who's all on here live.
yeah, who's on here live?
Yeah, so right now, if you're live, do me a favor, go ahead and push hashtag or put hashtag live in the actual comment section really quickly. I want to see all you guys really quickly, just so I have an understanding of who's all here. All right, love it.
All right, cool. So here's what I want to go through tonight. So we have a lot of offline conversations, and one of the things that we're focusing on right now is a lot of simplifying what we do, why we do it, how we do it, things like that. So we've gone from back in the day, it was, when I say back in the day, about a year ago, we wanted to be everything to everyone. We wanted to be able to do ads, postcards, email, social media posts, all this stuff, SEO, websites, like literally, like if you could like think about
coaching,
it, yeah, all that kind of stuff. We wanted to be everything to everyone, and essentially the whole idea was, well, if we diversify this much, we'll be the end all be all, and we'll be amazing at it. Mm-hmm. And then as time has gone on, we've seen differently that all the shit that we preach to everybody about niching down and making it easier and more simple for people to say yes to you, especially from a marketing perspective, do it. And then from us, we turned around and did the opposite over the past year, and it kind of smacked us in the face. So now that we're back to the simplification of everything, from your perspective, because I know what's going on in my head, but from your perspective, how do you feel, and don't make this a pitch, but like how do you actually feel about the direction? Because you're seeing we have to essentially turn this whole ship where half the people in this office were hired for all these other things, and now we're at this crossroads, or we were at this crossroads where now we're like, cool, how do we merge everybody back onto the same exact team to go for one single focus? So from your perspective, how is it all going from a behind-the-scenes CGN look?
When I think about it, it aligns with I mean, my career situation before being here was, general manager stuff at Qdoba, then military stuff, right? So this really aligns with the whole idea of the military in my mind, because the mission, overarching mission is still the same. The way to hit the actual objective may change, but I feel like that doesn't necessarily change at Qdoba. That doesn't change at other places, where it's like, I came here as a cook, I came here as an assistant manager, I came here as a general manager. I'm going to be doing those activities and those roles, and that's really what I'm going to be doing. What we've asked is, like you talked about, we've asked an email marketing stamp person to really learn more about how they can produce copy for our websites and how they can be focused on SEO as they produce that copy. And so it is cool to see how people are so invested into CGN that they are willing to be malleable to fulfill the role we now have for them, right? So to be candid with you, in some ways, maybe because I'm your friend, maybe because of my skill set, maybe because of my role, I'm a little protected sometimes by the change, right? You know, we still got to have someone who's going to sell this amazing stuff. We got, you know, I'm your friend, and I feel pretty damn confident about my ability to actually fulfill my role. So maybe I'm a little safeguarded. So, but I also see people who are consistently saying to themselves, like, hey, how can I best take care of CGN? When I see Fort, who's responsible for building websites, be so concerned about like CRO and like optimization and like how that's actually going to impact his role, it is so awesome. When I see Adrian talking about, okay, I was once a sales kind of coordinator, but now on the weekends, like similar to how I was doing with you, he talked to me about things with SEO focused or how we can use different, you know, tool sets that we have here to actually fulfill our mission. So for me, I think that from a behind the scenes standpoint, this is a cool experience to kind of see how galvanized people are in the direction of CGN. It's like, if we're going to go left, I'm willing to run with you, just like, you know, just like look at the dog's legs in front of you and just keep running. And that's pretty cool. It's also super cool because they're also thinking a lot more too. I think they now, and that overall as a team, I think we're thinking as far as like, how does my role impact my specific space and also the next man or next woman up as well. And that's super cool to look at.
And the reason I bring this up is there's a lot of contractors where what'll happen is they will, when they start their business, they do everything, kind of like what we were doing everything, right? Or maybe they go, well, I used to do, I don't know, lawn care, and now I want to get into design build. Well, if your entire crew, all they know how to do is mow lawns, weed, things like that, you then get to this crossroad where it is, okay, do I essentially just fire everybody and start over new with people that have landscape design build experience, or do I say this crew is good, they got the right values, now I'm going to try to turn this ship, let them know, you know, kind of come up with like a game plan of like, we got to learn this stuff, we got to make sure that we know how to do it, but I'm going to retain everybody. That was like, just candidly, like the first thought, which was, okay, I've got all these people that are set up for different things. Do we keep them or do we let them go? My obviously first thought is to keep them. Let's go. Let's get everybody all trained up. And then from my perspective on this as the owner and the one kind of doing this, especially like this past month and a half, has just been incredibly exhausting. Like you're
starting to show.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I'm exhausted by it all. I love the outcome and I love the direction that we're going, but because essentially what happened here is I now realize that a lot of this shit that like I know a lot more about this stuff than I think most people think I know. And I know you've brought that up a couple times of like, dude, like, you know this stuff. I really do, because I had to learn all this shit by myself back, 3, 4, 5 years ago and actually do it all myself. So now that I've kind of been more hands off on stuff, other people have been doing it, I've been kind of hesitant to jump back in because I had this whole notion of, work on the business, not in the business, right? Well, if I'm sitting here actually doing these, writing the blogs, like I wrote a blog yesterday, like, let me write them, let me do the website copy, let me do all these other things, because as stuff is happening, and everybody's learning this stuff, I recognize that I now need to step back in and get this thing going. So it's been an unbelievably exhausting journey to go through it, but I'm very, very, very glad, because what it does is it's two things. One, it helps retain everybody who's got the exact culture fit that we're looking for. They were just in the wrong seat. And the second aspect of that is when I get back in and actually do this stuff, I now see the inefficiencies. I see how things, if I didn't jump back in, how they could go, right? So essentially, I'm back now to working the assembly line with everybody else and going, oh, wow, like, okay, here's how we can make, like, I mean, I sat over Mike's shoulder one time and just watched him edit video, and I was like, what if we did this, this, and this? And he was like, oh yeah, like that would shave off half the amount of time. So actually getting back into it is going to allow for this stuff to happen a lot easier. And now that I look back on, everything that we've done over the past year, I realized like I was so strong in this work on the business, not in the business. And I thought that if I was still very hands-on with the actual product, that was the wrong thing for me to do.
Why would that be the wrong thing? I mean, I know you're saying right now that it may not be the wrong thing, but why did you think it was? Because for me, I think of it as don't have a situation where you're hindered from the growth of the company by working in the business, but working in the business is not innately wrong or bad. So I guess what about that stood out to you that made it feel like it was going to be wrong in that short period of time?
There is a level of okay, as a business owner, and you want to get out of actually doing all of it, because otherwise at that point, as the business owner, you're trading time for money, which most business owners didn't start their business because they always wanted to trade time for money. Then what starts to happen is you start to realize, like, especially if you guys have ever read the E-Myth, you want to do all the things with your hands, and the next thing you know, to actually run this thing and get it to the place that you want it to business-wise, you got to get off of the actual tools, out of all that stuff, and start to think of all the behind-the-scenes shit that needs to happen. So, for example, like this weekend, one of the things that I was supposed to do, and I ended up having to do other things within the business, was I was supposed to map out, because we have like the website process of building it. We also have the SEO process of doing all that stuff. But what we need to update, and we've done this before, but we need to be updated, was the entire process from the time that a YouTube video goes out or a podcast goes out all the way through, the marketing, the sales, the website build, the SEO, all the way through to the very end. Because then what I can do, because that's part of this whole journey, is the first thing I need to do is map out the entire customer journey for a CGN client. And the one that we currently have, I think we put together maybe like 3-4 months ago, but again, we've stripped away some extra services. Now it's a little bit different. So my whole thing and what I'm supposed to do, and this is what I'm working on with my coach actually, is map out the whole journey. Then from there, we have each individual thing that needs to happen. The next piece of that is actually breaking down what needs to happen at each step. So the actual SOP of each individual thing. Then from there, create metrics around it. What needs to happen? Because essentially at the beginning of it is marketing. Now, if the marketing doesn't work, what's going to happen to the sales?
No opportunity.
And if there's no opportunities in sales, what happens to actually being able to produce and make money?
No need to.
Yeah, right, because you got no business. So it's essentially, once you get the what needs to happen, the next piece is what are the actual metrics around it from a business standpoint, what needs to happen. And then the last piece of it is perfect. Who do we currently have on the team that can fulfill these roles? Do we have them or not? And if we do, what sort of education or training do they need to go through to be able to do their individual role effectively?
Are they qualified right now, or do they need assistance to be able to do that? Or
Correct.
And is there a willingness for them to want to do those things? I mean, I think it's a lot of different aspects that go into it as well.
And it's the whole idea where, we talked about this about a week and a half ago at our end of the quarter meeting, but it's process over people, which sounds very
it sounds harsh,
insensitive.
Yeah.
But it's realistically like.
But I think that has the people in mind, because what I will say is, I think I truly think I'm safeguarded in some ways, and it's not fair, but I think that it's sometimes how I view it sometimes. But everyone here at CGN wants to be successful in their role.
Correct.
And so if the process is not built and a pathway is not established and SOP is not, presented to them, especially if that's not what they originally came on for, what that does is having the process first over the people, that allows for them to get to a spot where they can say, hey, yes, I know a pathway for me to succeed. But if you're failing, or not necessarily failing, but just not hitting the mark that you feel like you should be hitting in your role, but you have no idea why you're not hitting it or a pathway to get there, you feel lesser than, and I mean, maybe not necessarily as a person, but very much so professionally.
Yeah, I mean it's like this like idea of like loyalty with this, where I'm like, oh well, we don't want to let this person go because they've done this or they've done that, or and vice versa. Like I can't leave CGN because of I've been here for so long.
The amazing health benefits.
Yeah, so but it's like at the end of the day, it's the same thing in my mind as being in a relationship with somebody where you're like, well, we're married, well, we're dating. Maybe marriage is a little bit different. Now that I'm married, I can speak from about a month and a half of experience, but you don't want to leave because of it could get better, or you're in love with what it used to be and things like that. And at the end of the day, I mean, I have, as we've gone through different changes, I've had very blunt conversations with a lot of people on the team where I essentially say, look, just so you know, I'm a firm believer that people outgrow companies and companies outgrow people. And we've seen some of that. We've had a couple people in the past 2-3 months leave that were here for
amazing people.
For
absolutely
a long time,
amazing people.
But essentially, it just got to the point where the pathway that we were going is different than the pathway that they were going, and neither was right or wrong. It was just no longer like they wanted to continue to progress in a different direction, and and CGN was going in this other direction, and it just no longer made sense. But it's both people, both parties are like nervous to bring it up.
Yeah,
where both parties are thinking like,
I'm frustrated because I want to go to the next step. Like example, if I wanted to be in a management position at a certain role, but there's no management position here at CGN,
right?
Then it's got to make sense for, hey, let's go a place where you can go do that and to facilitate them. I love thinking about like the first person that left CGN when I was here at CGN was Alex, and I remember us going to like outside the office. We all went to Melissa's birthday party, all things like that. We all hanging out and stuff, and to think that Alex loved NASCAR, moved here from New York, loved NASCAR, came to like the home of NASCAR in Charlotte, North Carolina, and is now like doing what he was doing at CGN for Dale Earnhardt Jr. Like, Dale Earnhardt Jr. He couldn't do that here. You know what I'm saying? So, but I'm saying that's super cool that he's able to do those things in a cool method in that way. So I'm all for it.
Yeah. So that's been kind of like internally behind the scenes, like some of the stuff that we're going through, which is the transition, the ramp up. I'm having to do a lot of extra stuff now, which this time last year I didn't have to do. This time last year I was more focused on like, where are we going? What needs to happen for this, and this? But now that we need hands again, I'm like, okay, cool, let's do it. And it's like the game again, where it really feels like I'm now back in it. It almost feels like I'm in the first year of business all over again.
Well, let me ask a hard question then. Q2, thinking about Q2, all right? So it's April through June. What was the biggest lesson you learned? What was your biggest triumph? And what was your biggest mistake?
Biggest lesson I learned was just the notion that I jumped out of the product too fast. So essentially got my eyes off the prize. I thought that, everything's just getting taken care of, but I started to realize that, the person who I trained to do a task, they then did the task. Well, then they trained the next person to do it, and then they trained the next person. So now each time something happens, what ended up happening was I would explain to the first person why I did things. Well, then the second person would explain why they did things to the third person. And each time, some of it started to go away because some of those little nuancy things that, I do because I'm like, oh.
It was institutional knowledge, but it was not actually written down, SOP'd at all.
And regardless of SOPs, it's still like, I grew up in a contracting household. So I've been doing, I've had CGM for 5 years. I've been doing the marketing things for 8 years. But I've been in I've had a father who's a contractor for majority of my life. So a lot of times I can pull back to those experiences where I'm like, oh, well, let me think about this from his perspective back when Yellow Pages went out. Well, he would probably thinking this, this, and this, and this is what he did. Well, unless you had that exact same experience, you're going to handle shit differently. So as I'm now trying to ramp up and train and stuff like that, I'm now, explaining what we're doing, how we do it. But a lot of times over the past, I'm really realizing a lot of it is I forget to explain why it's important.
Purpose, yeah.
The context behind it, the background behind it. And it frustrates people because, they go off and do something and then I'm like, ooh, that's not it. And they're like, well, what I do wrong? And I'm like, well, this is why we're doing this. And it's like, oh, and I'm like, shit, I should have explained why. So, but the biggest thing here over the past quarter that I realized, the biggest revelation was the pulling out of product too fast, where now moving forward, like I'm always going to have my hand somewhat in how's it all going? How are we doing? Like, let me just sit over your shoulder. Maybe I don't have to do it anymore. Maybe because at this point, I would say that I was talking to my dad about this over the weekend. Everybody.
Why'd you point at me when you said your dad?
Because I look at you as a father figure sometimes. You guys have the same bone structure. Everybody in this office can now do their role better than I can do their role.
Dang, that hurt me a little bit because I just got better than you in sales. Now I'm just like everybody else now.
So that's like a cool feeling where part of me is like, it was nerve wracking to have to go back into it because I realized like, okay, if I watch what they're doing and then all this, and I see like, oh my God, that's so intricate. That's so well done. I can never lose them. And then they leave. Now I'm going to freak out. So it was better to plead ignorance than to actually like jump back in. So now we have everybody around us that at this point, like Mike and Aaron are better at anything media. You're better at selling. We got SEO taken care of. We got websites taken care of. We got copy like all that kind of stuff. I'm no longer the best at. But I will say, if you put them all together, I'm still the best at every single, I don't think anybody's better
Like
at doing it
the
all.
jack of all trades
Yeah.
is master of none, but a master or whatever.
Master of some is better than
one, a master of one.
Sure.
That's what it says.
Okay.
But something like that. But at the end of the day, it just the idea describes describes the idea of just being better, like being good at holistically.
Right. So going back in, that was the big thing. I would say the biggest triumph overall is just, again.
No, let's say the biggest failure first because I want to hear the triumph in the end. I want to end on a positive note.
Biggest failure is probably just realizing that I caught that too late. I don't know if that's like a cop-out answer, but we always live and that's the thing, even now when we mess up, because everybody messes up, we all make mistakes. We were talking about this to, I think, Greg the other day, and something happened and he was just upset. And it was just look, man, the only way that we know how to fix this problem is to have the problem happen. We can do everything we want in our power to prevent all this stuff from happening. But the only way that we're going to learn this stuff is it's got to happen. Now, if it happens repeatedly and we don't fix it, that's one thing. It's the whole idea of fool me once. Yeah. But and as long as it's not a catastrophic failure, I mean, this is what we talk about with that same coach, hey, is it a minor failure where it's more of a opportunity to learn? And that would be in the contracting space, people showing up late. The only way that you're going to have to enforce a be on time policy for the whole company is for some people to show up late. And sometimes this stuff's actually good where for us, we every time we've done a proposal for somebody where they're hey, write me a proposal, the person's never moved forward.
Yeah.
100% of the time. And we've only done it a handful of times. But I then get to say, when somebody says, well, you know what, just send me a proposal. I'm hey, look, man, I would love to send you one. However, 100% of the time that I send one over to people, they don't move forward. So I wish I could send you one. I just can't. Which, if you want to learn how to do stuff like that, 7 o'clock tonight, they'll teach you how to do that shit. But that's the sort of stuff that I learn a lot. I never realized how many books I actually read or how many podcasts I listen to that are business-wise or business-focused. Do
you have a lot of frontal cranial lobe pressure?
I don't know. I don't know. I seek this stuff out. For me, if you ask Audrey, I asked Audrey a year ago what my favorite hobby is. She said business. And I said, okay, you can't use business. What would be my second favorite hobby? And she said, talking about business. I love it. It is so much fun to me. And the problems suck. And this is my favorite quote. And I brought it up last week in my business group where it is by Alfred Hitchcock. And it is, people are not afraid of the actual bang. It's the anticipation of the bang. And that is like all these problems that once a problem arises, it's like, fuck, all right, we're good. But the anticipation of it is so much freaking worse.
Yeah.
So I would say with all this stuff, the biggest downfall is just the inability to realize that I needed to step back in, or I should step back in, or things like that, a little bit too late. So now, but the only way, again, that I know that that's a thing is to have let it happen. And now moving forward, we can build around that and establish almost like, it's like a checks and balances system where this is not my end all be all, where I'm always going to be doing blogs, but I'm like, okay, cool. Like, can we figure out a way to make blogs better, more engaging, work faster in SEO, and produce them at a higher volume? Well, the only way for us to problem solve this stuff, because there's only a few people in this office that have ever written blogs for clients. I'm one of them. So does it make sense for me to completely say, I'm not figuring this out? Like, I'm pretty sure even to the end, Steve Jobs still got to play with the iPhone and go, I like this, I don't like this, stuff like that. So that was the biggest thing, was simply just having the timeline of where I should have jumped in earlier. But again,
were there any signs, or before you actually stubbed your toe, or any like that said you need to jump in, or like selfishly, I mean, did you feel like anyone in your circle was telling you that you need to jump back in? Like, I know you're looking to your dad and your, me and your coach, stuff like that, as far as like mentors in your life, but.
I mean, typically it's like the market will dictate it.
Yeah.
Like the market will tell you what they want. So a lot of it is the market was saying, you guys are doing this, I want to do that. And we're like, okay, well, if you're going that way, there must be something over this way that you like. So let me figure out what the hell that other thing is. And that's like back to, I know, bringing up a lot, like Hormozy, like his whole, like, I forget who said it, and I talked about it today, but there was like a quote that's like, what's a really good business model? Doing what somebody else does in half the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate letting me finish that by myself.
I listened to that yesterday.
It's a good one though, right?
I probably said that.
It's a good quote, but like there's so many things, and this is like a lot of the shit, and this is why we're doing all this stuff where it's like, okay, let's take the SEO. If we could get you SEO results in half the amount of time, that's way freaking better than being able to do all these different things, because at the end of the day, all people really want is the result. And a lot of business owners, we do all these things because we think, or hell, even people that have multiple businesses, but combined, they have like all 3 or 4 of these businesses, when they combine them, they make a normal salary, and it's like, all right, I'm confused. You have like 4 businesses running, and collectively you make $100,000 a year off of them. Why do you have 4? And I really think it's just people are afraid to go all in, because if they always have multiple businesses and multiple things, well, now they always have a reason why they don't go all in. And if it doesn't work, it's because they have the excuse of, well, I didn't go all in. I'm too busy. I'm too this. And it's funny. We talked about this as a team the other day, where when it comes to the problems and the issues, there's some like fallacy or some mental thing where it's like, when you look at somebody else messing up, like if I look at Chris and Chris has messed up a sale, I'll say, that's because Chris isn't as good at sales. He messed up the sale, things like that. But if I were to hop on the phone with the same person and I mess it up,
It's got to be the prospect's fault.
it's the prospect's fault. I don't have enough time to prep for it. It's my environment. It's not me. It's the situation. But with you, it's you, not the situation. So a lot of people deal with that. I mean, every single person deals with that at some point in life.
So you're saying that when we're examining a situation, if we are looking at it from someone else's lens, we're able to give that person blame. But when we look at it from our own lens, it's always got to be an outside circumstance that we don't have control over.
Yes, I just try to look it up really quickly, but it's this really good quote by Scott Adams. I'm pretty sure that's his name. He is did Dilbert, but essentially his quote is, everybody is really good at solving other people's problems. We're so good that if you brought my own problems to me, but said they were yours, I could solve them instantly. So it's just the notion of everybody else's problems are their problems, but if you have a problem, it's circumstantial. So I would say the downside of it is, again, over the past quarter, just kind of getting into it too late. But the biggest upside of it all is essentially just kind of, for me, from a confidence perspective, the stripping down of stuff, it has helped so much. Now that I'm back in it and I'm seeing what's working, I'm not working, I'm like, I could see the potential all over again. So when you think about, the business owner, a lot of times people say like, oh, they're the visionary. I don't know what the fuck that really means. Like, I lay out the vision and I think of a visionary as like, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, I don't know, freaking Alexander the Great. Like, oh, we're going to conquer the world. Like, I don't have that. I'm like, oh, I just really want to make this product good to help all the people that I have. So I don't really know necessarily what like the vision is per se, or like what qualifies as the vision versus not. I know the direction that we're going in and I know where I want to be. So I guess maybe that's what you would consider the vision. But for me, it's essentially having the confidence to, now that I'm back in it, really see where we can take this thing, what the potential is, and combine that with rallying the troops, like doing, the galvanizing of the team to say, look, this is where I want to head to. This is where I really think we can do a lot of damage in. This is what we need to get there. What do y'all think? And as I think we've seen, everybody's like, we're in. Like, it's, at first it's a little scary for everybody because essentially we're course correcting on something where we're going a different direction. And, entrepreneurs, I'm the one, like, have you ever been on jet ski before?
Yep.
Okay. When you're
You ever
driving,
been back to jet ski before?
I was about to say.
Oh,
Right.
yeah, you have no control.
Right. On the jet ski, you have full control when you're driving it, but on the back of it, you're holding on for dear life because you don't know, as the backseat driver, if I'm about to whip left, whip right, totally stop. You're just hanging on for dear life. And that's been a problem of mine where I've essentially said, hey guys, we're going to whip left, but you don't know why. Half the time you're not even sure that we're going to whip left. Like, it's just been a lack of like definitive, like, this is what we're doing. So now that we're back in it, now that we're guiding the ship in the right direction, everybody's on the same page. It's very cool from my perspective to see everybody not only rally around it, but really like embrace it. Like Adrian, like, hey, this is what we're doing for this, this, and this. Like people actually jumping in and enjoying it, because now when you brought it up before, where it's like, well, you don't want to leave, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but it's that weird relationship where, you're still together because of the time together and the loyalty. But for as frustrating as it is, where I'm like, man, how do I better utilize them? Like, this is on me to figure it out. They're also like, I feel lost. Like, everybody wants a purpose. Like, you don't want to show up to work and feel like you got nothing.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have everybody now feel and understand the tangible purpose of, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it, and actually buy into it in a very, very real way that, like, I don't think we've had this much bond or like buy-in essentially
especially
in a while.
Especially, and I don't mean to speak like an old head at CGN, but like, especially as we've had a lot of like newer members to CGN and newer members to the culture and things like that too. This does feel like we're on the cusp of more of a heyday situation with the new kind of, new connection as well. And you didn't ask this question, but it would have been a great question for you to ask me, which was my favorite, like biggest triumph, but I feel like for the company's had last quarter. And I think what that was a repositioning of understanding that if my product is good, it's going to be a lot easier to do all the other parts of the business, right? So I'm not so sure if I believe that, like, if your product's so good, then you won't have to sell, or if you sell so good, you want. I think that it all works together, right? But if there's a huge part about your product and your offer that I'm not sure that many people have really dived into, right? So we talked about this on a Wealth Builder coaching call the other day, but like, people's offer saying that they do great quality work, but not actually having a warranty to back that up. So, hey, if you do great quality work and someone says, okay, I do great quality work, so does person A, so does person B, but person A says, hey, I do great quality work, and I'm just going to tell you that, and person B says, I do great quality work, I'm going to give you a 5-year warranty, it totally changes the perception of that offer and the way that someone actually feels from it. So I feel like for us, like going back to the product and looking at it holistically, like all the parts that go into the product, all the parts that go into the experience that our clients actually have, where we're best suited to like take care of them and actually fill that void or that gap. For me, my guiding light has always been like, the coolest thing about this position for me is the real opportunity to change an industry?
So let me ask you this. 100% of startups say, oh, come on in. We're changing the world. We're changing this. We're changing that. So the more that I hear like that kind of stuff, the more it rubs me wrong, where I'm like, okay, everybody fucking says that. So in your opinion, how?
Okay, because I'll tell you why. When I came in without a contractor background, I think I understood business pretty well, but I didn't come from a contractor background. And from an outsider looking in, it seemed like there was this fight between homeowner and contractor that did not need to happen because both sides were not putting in what was needed on each side. Like the contractor was so sick and tired of all the tire kickers, people beating them down about their prices, not being able to find the right people, people thinking that they're, bad people and judging them off of past experiences, right? And the whole time they're saying, hey, I want to make profit in my business, and I hope this person can actually afford me. And they asked, to what I still believe is still somewhat of a silly question of, what's your budget, right? And on the other end, the homeowner is not educated at all about what goes into being a contractor. They have no idea what this stuff costs. They don't want to waste the contractor's time. They've got time to do things themselves as well. And so it just seemed to be so flawed in the sense of contractor is hoping like hell that this customer is educated and is willing to follow a process and has an idea of what this stuff costs. Homeowner is wondering like heck, what this stuff costs, what this person's process is like, and can they actually solve my problem? So they both want the exact same thing. And so when I say change in industry, it still is, it is frustrating to think that an infinite amount of the contracting space is still relying on a system that seems flawed, especially when it comes to pricing. And by that, I mean either being, priced so low that they're not actually making profit in their business, or waiting so long to talk about price so that we don't even know if we should have even had this courting conversation beforehand. When I think about budget, I think why I think it's a silly question is because I think the only time that budget really matters is, or actually makes sense, is when we talk about someone buying a house or maybe a car. Because it's really along the lines of what the bank is willing to loan me. That's what my budget is. So if the bank was willing to give me a $500,000 loan and I'm willing to spend all of that loan and take that whole loan on, maybe that's what my actual budget is. But if you ask me for an outdoor living space, what's my budget? Well, maybe if I'm not educated, I may tell you a number that seems right, like $35,000 for my budget, but I'm not spending my last $35,000 in my life on an outdoor living space. I probably have $50,000 that I'm willing and able to spend on this outdoor living space if I knew that that's what I actually wanted was going to cost that amount of money, right? So when I say changing an industry, I think it really goes back to this whole idea. I know we talk about it as a phrase sometimes, but I think it really does retrain homeowners how to buy from contractors. I think it also retrains contractors on their responsibility to homeowners in the space. It also shows hey, if I'm frustrated with people not following my process, then it makes sense for me to actually lay out my process and actually have a process that people can actually follow. So I get to see on a regular basis the amount of stress that is resolved through CGN. I get to see on a regular basis the amount of financial stress and financial burden that's able to be resolved. Also, the family burden, the time burden, all those different things. And when contractors don't have those situations, they really do shine. They stand up as beacons in the community because they're fucking good people and amazing people. And I'm so happy to know the Bernardos, the Bubbas, the freaking Andrew Pellix. I'm so happy to know the Brian Dailies and the freaking Jason Rectors and all. I'm so happy to know them. I'm so happy to know, Jessica Crosby and all those other people like that too. Jada Washington, because of the fact that they're fantastic people. And when they present themselves and have a system that allows them to show themselves that way and run a healthy business, they're able to give back so much. It is so cool watching how much our clients and even non-clients give back. You know, them willing to help so many other people and willing to do so much. And they have like these grand ambitions when it comes to like their impact they want to actually make. So when I say the ability to actually change an industry, there's a gap that we've got to fill. There's a void that we got to fill. Yes, there's other marketing companies out there for contractors, but I don't know any other marketing companies out there for contractors that are talking about the things that we help do. Obviously, we focus on website, we focus on SEO, and I totally get that. I'm so on board with that. But that is just a small remedy to the real problem that we actually solve, and that is super cool. We are also a lot more influential than I think sometimes we give ourselves credit for. When I hear, like, people weren't talking about in the same vein as far as transformation or transparency or changing lives before we kind of got into the space of it all. And so I love all those aspects we bring to this space. And because we have that influence, I also take it very seriously. You know, I feel like I'm a pretty like, you know, go with the flow kind of person. But, you know, I'm not sure if you even heard this from me, but like it hurts me a little bit when people don't think that I care. Like I don't know anybody that knows me long term that does not know, like, undoubtedly that I care. And so, you know, it is super cool for us to, you know, hit the, you know, the Inc. 5,000, you know, list, to be able to be an awesome growing company, you know, one of the fastest growing companies in the United States. That's super awesome. But way more important to me is the fact that people know that, like, what we're doing here has substance, and maybe even from a selfish standpoint, that, like, I genuinely care about the people that I'm helping. And so when I say change the industry, that's projecting, but I also feel like my self-worth is also tied into the idea of helping people as well.
Okay. That answers that question. I appreciate it.
No problem, brother.
All right. We good?
We good.
All right, everybody. We said it before. Go learn to sell. It's coming up in 1 minute. It'll be some good shit, but otherwise, Chris and I and a few other people from the team, Mike will be there too. We're going down to Atlanta tomorrow. We're at a trade show on Wednesday and Thursday. So everybody be good. Go learn to sell.